Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Missing Frames. This is the podcast where we watch all the movies we should have seen by this point in our lives. I'm your host, Shawn Eastridge. We're talking about drumming today. I am only a drummer at heart, and this movie that we're talking about is so drumming centric that I needed to bring on a professional. One of my personal favorite drummers of all time is here right now, and that drummer is Spencer Tweedy. Spencer, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Shawn.
We are here doing this a year after our Stop Making Sense episode.
Yeah, which was so fun.
I'm sensing a tradition. Maybe every year we don't talk to each other ever, but in October we'll come back and watch a music movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're like, nobody else can see your face. I see there's like a twitch and some concern, but you know.
No. I don't know. We might run out of well, there's a lot of movies I haven't seen, so it could probably work.
Perfect. So this is one you have not seen, and
Yeah,
that is very exciting because Whiplash is such a fantastic film. It has such an insane reputation. So many people are like, you know, if you list the best, greatest films of the 21st century, Whiplash is typically on that list. A lot of people would put it near the top of that list. And I wouldn't argue with that at all. I think it's a fantastic movie. I remember seeing it. It came out 2014, so it's officially 10 years old this year. I remember hearing about it from my film friends. 2014 was a great year for movies in general because we had Whiplash, we had Birdman was out that year.
Ooh, that's great.
My favorite was Boyhood, which had a couple Tweedy songs. It had a Tweedy song in it and a Wilco song in it, which is how I knew. I was like, well, this movie gets me.
Totally. I love the music in Birdman too.
Birdman's fantastic. Whiplash has because it is, I don't want to go too much into the weeds on this before you've seen it, but we are dealing in the realm of jazz drumming. So it is that it's got a vibe and an energy that does match, I think, Birdman's kind of hectic insanity. But totally. I remember hearing about Whiplash I remember it was sort of this small thing that some of my friends had seen. And then it got to a point where it was just like this massive roar of like, you need to see this movie. And when I finally saw it, I was very, very happy about it. But do you recall 2014? What was going on in 2014? Anything exciting happening?
2014, I graduated high school, and then a few days later, my dad and I headed out on our first tour together, supporting the record that we would put out later in September that year. So it was a really monumental year for me, experiencing, touring on a whole different level than I ever had before, and putting our record out. It was a very memorable year for me.
And SUKIERAE is a very memorable album. It's one of my favorites, one of my personal favorites.
Thank you.
And that was your first time actually touring as a drummer?
Kind of. My band with my friends had done really, really short trips, away from home, but I don't think I had gone out with. I certainly hadn't been playing with Phenome or Liam Kazar or any of the bands that that took me out later. So basically I had only really even witnessed touring as a bystander, watching my dad growing up. So it was kind of my first real experience on the road.
And you gravitated towards drums from like a very young age. There's a great clip, and I should probably do this. Being a Wilco fan and not having done I Am Trying to Break Your Heart on my podcast feels like a problem. So I got to get on that. But there's a wonderful scene of you. I think you were, what, 3 or 4?
5. I think I'm 5 years oldish.
Okay. It's really, really sweet, you and your dad. But you demonstrate your love of drumming in that scene. And so I imagine this was something you wanted to do from a very, very early age.
Oh yeah.
What made you gravitate towards drumming specifically versus another instrument?
Who knows? It's precognition for me.
It's in the stars. It was destiny.
There was a drum set at Lounge Jacks, which was the bar that my mom used to co-own in Chicago and ran for until it closed in 2000. And I spent a lot of time there from literally the day I was born until it closed when I was 4 years old. And I ended up getting supervised by random drunk musicians, or I think I'm making that up partly, but definitely got supervised by lots of different adults there, and
responsible, sober adults.
Yeah, I mean, probably varying degrees. And there was a drum set in the basement, and people used to kind of just plop me down on this adult-sized drum set, including my mom and my dad, and let me, play with the drumsticks, and obviously was not tall enough to reach any of the pedals on the floor. But yeah, around, like, there are photos of me kind of meeting that drum set as a 2-year-old in Lounge Jacks, and then later on, my dad sent home an actually child-sized drum set from the road from somewhere on the West Coast, I think, when I was like around that time, and that age that you see in I'm Trying to Break Your Heart. And I was really serious about playing those drums, and would wake up at the butt crack of dawn, like all little kids do, and would just bang on drums my entire childhood.
That's amazing. Do you think you maybe were thinking, because I know I personally, for a long time, I was the biggest Wilco fan I knew until I met you. I think you have the reputation of being the biggest Wilco fan. And
oh wow,
do you think do you think that's inaccurate?
Yeah, I'm a cheerleader from the inside. Absolutely. I don't know if I can actually compete, in the fandom Olympics, because I don't have to, travel to see shows and buy tickets and vote with my dollars. And
that's true.
Not that that's what it's all about.
You're kind of cheating. You've cheated to get to that level. It's all right.
I'm roided, and there's an asterisk on my fandom.
I've given you permission. I dubbed the Wilco fan number one, and
thank you.
As a fellow Wilco fan, do you think you gravitated towards like drums because you saw like your dad was primarily doing the guitar thing, and you were thinking, as a Wilco fan, someday I want to play with him, and this would be a great way to compliment him if he's going to play guitar?
I don't think so. I think that's a happy accident. I really have no idea. I mean, yeah, it's possible that it was even more satisfying because it allowed me to play with him, and to jam, which we started doing when I was really young. But no, I think it was something else. I think it was just thinking they were cool. And I don't know, maybe it's a little bit easier to just bang on drums than to teach yourself guitar chords. And I did learn, I did start playing guitar around the same age, but for whatever reason, didn't take it as seriously.
Do you remember the first drummer you started paying attention to and thinking like, oh yeah, this is cool, that's who I want to emulate?
Other than Glenn, it was definitely Greg Saunier from Deerhoof, because my dad introduced me to some early Deerhoof record and gravitated to his style, played along those records all the time, and he was definitely the first drummer, long before I even knew who Levon Helm was, or I definitely knew who Ringo was, listened to a lot of Beatles, but before I thought about pretty much anyone else, I was listening to Greg.
Do you like this? Like, Ringo's a great example because I think it gets super underrated in general, because people are thinking like, oh, you got to have the frills and you've got to have like the showy stuff. Like, one of my probably my favorite drummer is Keith Moon, because not only is he insane, but like his general demeanor was insane. But there's something very, I do this, I show people, I'm like, this is why Ringo was a genius. I'll play the single release of Love Me Do, which I think it was a different drummer because the studio didn't want Ringo. They were like, let's bring in somebody else. And you can hear the difference because the album Please Please Me has Ringo drumming on it.
Yeah.
And it's not something you would pay much attention to unless you were asked to pay attention to it, but you can hear the difference. You can
Yeah.
hear
Yeah.
why Ringo works so much better with them than
Yeah.
this other random guy. But do you have like a preference for, like, do you love it all, or personally do you feel like you have to go to bat sometimes for the Ringos of the world and say like, look, there's something beautiful about this simplicity?
Well, I feel like the world is rewarding the Ringos and the non-traditional, non-super chopsy players, which it makes me happy. So yes, when called to, I do feel like I have to, not have to, but want to say like, hey, it's about the song, like if somebody's really in touch with the song, then they're the best. It's not about their athletic ability or whatever. But I feel like a lot of luckily these days feel like people are kind of thinking along those lines. So the Ringo school or whatever you want to call it, people who are playing, discovering really kind of idiosyncratic ways to support songs are appreciated.
My exposure to you as a drummer, just as a
Hmm.
fan, seeing the I'm Trying to Break Your Heart, the film, and then seeing, I think I told you this last time we chatted, it wasn't on the episode, but I want to get it on the record.
Hmm.
But I remember seeing you, there was a CBS Sunday morning special
Oh
where
yeah.
there was some footage of you jamming with your dad, and so I remember seeing the SUKIERAE tour. It was before the album had been released, so nobody
Hmm.
had heard the songs. It was summer 2014, and I remember being excited because I'd seen Wilco, and I
Hmm.
hadn't seen your dad do a solo gig. And then
Hmm.
I remember hearing like, "Oh yeah, Spencer's going to be with them. That's cool. He's going to play drums. Oh, that how sweet! Like, oh, that's very very sweet. Like, just kind of like." And then weirdly enough, thinking to myself, "God, I'm not going to know any of these songs. I hope I like them." Kind of
Yeah,
naively, in a weird way, like as if,
that's fair. Yeah.
well, but also like after hearing them, it felt so stupid because I was like, well, of course, like this is the artist that speaks to me so personally,
Hmm.
and so
Yeah.
this is the person who's been writing the music that speaks. Why wouldn't
Yeah.
I connect to it? But there was that kind of like naive perspective of going into a show knowing there were going to be a bunch of new songs I'd never heard before. And then like also thinking like, oh, Spencer's gonna be playing with him. That's really, really cool. Like how sweet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you guys opened with Down From Above, and then the second
Mm.
song you played was Diamond Light Part 1, which
Hmm.
is, I mean, I like, it's some fancy drumming. And I remember you
Yeah.
could feel the audience, like that moment when the audience went from being kind of like, oh, it's cool that Jeff brought Spencer on this tour with him, to being
Mm.
like, oh my God, like this kid can really drum. You could feel the energy in the audience of like, this is
That's
like
good.
really cool. But that was
Mhm.
my experience of your drumming and seeing you grow. And it's been amazing just watching you continue to play with your dad, and whenever
Mhm.
you get a chance to come out on stage and
Yeah.
beyond like the Tweedy stuff and like at Solid Sound, it's great.
Thanks. That's validating to hear that you could feel that telepathic shift from your fellow concert goers there. 'Cause yeah, I mean, you know, of course, we're always aware like it could that some people will perceive it as vanity, playing together, playing with your kid. And there's not much that I can do to prevent that. But, hopefully most people encountering the music would feel like, no, they're doing this on purpose.
Yeah.
um, is a nice thing.
Yeah, there's an unfair level of, because I mean you do see it in other, I guess, like
Hmm.
quote unquote famous families, of like the
Hmm.
idea of nepotism and things like that. And what's beautiful
Yeah.
about your dad and you and the relationship you have is the symbiotic nature of it. Like just
Yeah.
the like you are pushing yourself, and I sense the desire to be aware of like maybe that false perception of yourself,
Hmm.
like that feeling of like, I want
Hmm.
to make sure people know like that I'm doing this because I love it, and it's not just, and the family connection is totally fine, and like it's totally cool if your dad wants to play music and bring you on tour. But
Yeah.
I love the hunger I feel every time you get on stage to like to
Mm.
prove yourself. And it's
Mm.
like I already believe it. I've seen it. I believe it, and I know other people do too. And
Thanks.
that's the wonderful thing, is hearing, and why I'm excited for the upcoming long overdue Tweedy sequel album whenever it is released. to hear your dad challenged in different ways by you
Mm.
as a drummer, and to hear you guys play off each other is very, very exciting. It's
Thanks.
and speaks to that. I think if you listen to the SUKIERAE record, compare it to the Wilco records, it's your dad, so there's a similar sound, but there is a unique sound to it. And I think that comes from your interplay and speaks against, hopefully this is, again, like, you come on my show, I boost your ego. That's our deal. But hopefully, like, I really do sincerely hope this helps you feel that, and helps you feel that sense
absolutely.
of empowerment, because I do think
Absolutely.
it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I just wanna do right by the chance that I have, you know, and yeah, just to play as well as I can.
Definitely.
That's all.
Awesome. So, well, let's talk about Whiplash a bit, a film that you have not seen. Do you remember, like, I talked a bit about 2014. As a film nerd, being surrounded by close friends who are film nerds, this was a movie that was in my wavelength. Had you heard of it? Like, as a musician, was this a movie that had kind of breached your circle?
Definitely, yeah. I remember seeing lots about it when it came out, and lots of previews for it, and maybe even some parodies or jokes online. I think it did well in the box office, so I definitely saw it around a bunch, but never ended up actually seeing it.
Was it something you wanted to see, or were you kind of like, I don't know?
Well, to be honest, I think, well, for one, I see a shamefully small quantity of movies every year, but also I probably didn't see it because I think that I was a little bit afraid of it. I don't know if afraid is exactly the right word. I think maybe prejudiced and afraid could apply here. I think that I was worried that, I mean, it's really, really hard for films to pull off to pull off music accurately, which is something I think we've talked about on the Stop Making Sense episode. Just like, it's hard. There's like all these distorted ideas of what bands actually sound like in a room, or sound like when films show live concerts. It often like makes no sense. Which, who cares if it doesn't all not everything has to be has to be totally true to life. But I think I was thinking, like, I don't really want to necessarily see this representation of like what it means to try really hard for excellence as a musician. And also, I mean, I have a very, 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 very small amount of music academy trauma compared to a lot of people I know.
Right.
But I do have my own experiences of, like, you know, jazz band in school and concert band, and at least one drum teacher that I did not resonate with at all, and whose style was antithetical to everything I love about music to me. So I was like, I kind of shy away from things like that. You know, I like music staying in my domain. I like the relationship being, like, you know, staying firmly in this neck of the woods where it's really free and really empowering and really fun. So maybe I associated the movie with all of the things that aren't that.
Right. So we're going to be working through some stuff when we come back to talk about this movie. This is going to be good. Do you want to try to guess what the film is about? Do you know anything about it to kind of feed a potential plot synopsis prediction?
Yeah, my understanding or prediction based on the previews I saw long ago are, we've got a drummer, Miles Teller, played by Miles Teller. He's trying to be the best in the West in jazz drumming, and he's got a band director who's a tyrant. He's got super high standards. Maybe he behaves inappropriate. He's got such high standards. He might be, he's yelling. He's angry. He might even be violent. And I think Miles' character, I don't know what the character's real name is, will be confronted with the choice between his well-being and his artistic goals, his physical goals. And yeah, we'll see the tension between those two things, and the tension in his relationship with this tyrannical, but probably ultimately, I'm going to predict that ultimately there's some warmth there or he's not just a straight up villain. Perhaps he's actually the one who shows the drummer, or provides just enough love for him to
ascend
and achieve some peace of one way or another. And I don't know how I know this, maybe from some clip that surfaced somewhere, but I think there's a dramatic car crash, but I guess we'll find out. But yeah,
find out.
I think that's the gist.
All right. That's a good gist. It was a good guess at a gist. So we are going to find out. We will go watch, and then we'll be back in a bit to discuss it. So stay tuned, everybody.
Now available to own on video cassette.
All right, we're back. Spencer, you've now been whiplashed.
Yes.
How do you feel?
Somewhat drained, I think. Yeah, I had fun, so that's not draining. I was entertained, definitely entertained, but yeah, on some other level, kind of drained, and just sort of like my eyes hurt a little bit from rolling a little bit.
It's funny, the last time I watched it, first time I watched it, I was just kind of blown away by, I think, the energy of it all. And just like you said, it's like, it is a fun movie. It is energetic. It's just got this like raw, like intensity. It is one of the more stressful movies I think I've seen, It's funny. It was officially released yesterday, 10 years ago. So our timing, once again, our impeccable timing.
We're in tune.
Destiny has brought us to this place. But, it's in October, typically we're watching spooky movies, horror movies, or at least I am.
Yeah.
And Whiplash doesn't technically fall into the category of horror film, but I feel like it could.
It is scary. He gives you a really scary villain expression in the final showdown scene.
Yes,
there's one moment where J.K. Simmons looks terrifying.
Yeah. Not just one. I'd say there are plenty of moments where he looks. I definitely do not want him yelling in my face.
There's only one facial expression that looks other than human. Yes, he's scary in a human way. He's screaming at people, screaming in their face, slapping them. But the only moment where you're like, are you a demon is that final one.
Right. Very good point. I think the first time I saw it, I was so overwhelmed by the experience. I was like, wow, what a masterpiece. And this is probably, I think, the third time I've watched it, but every time I've watched it, becoming less enamored or falling out of love with it sounds more critical or harsh, but I think the seams start to show. And I think what you described as like, oh my God, like this is ridiculous. There are things now where I watch it that my love for it is dulled a bit because now I'm paying attention to those certain things. And I wonder if we align on those.
Well, I will say, I mean, my expectations, like we discussed in part one about how live sound would be handled and how drumming would be handled, were so low that I am impressed. That, like, I feel like they did more than a good enough job making actors seem like they're playing their instruments and making the sounds. It's like, whatever, it doesn't need to sound exactly realistic all the time anyway. And I think Miles Teller really did a good job, like looking like he's hitting stuff. There's tons and tons and tons of continuity errors as far as drumming is concerned, but it's fine. It's like, who cares? It's make believe, guys. So that's, I think that's actually fine. I think the more unbelievable stuff is like his decisions toward not to jump further than you want yet.
Let's do
it. His decisions toward the end about, just sort of like going off the rails and proving himself and all that is like, that's fucking crazy. Absolutely no chance. Like, I guess you can make the case that benefited his relationship with Fletcher, or that led to a breakthrough in his relationship. But as far as how that would be received in that academic jazz competition environment, it's like, everyone would be turning to themselves going like, what the hell
Yeah,
is
what is
going on
going
here?
on?
This is embarrassing. And I'm sorry to say, like, you know, the central conceit for, I think, for the movie is that in making that choice and in playing that, you know, epic fill at the end, that he would really like basically have his Charlie Parker moment, like become a great, or at least the first
Yes.
step toward becoming great. That's like a central conceit, and I'm sad to say that I don't think that that's possible. I don't think that's very, very
You don't think
unbelievable.
it's possible for J.K. Simmons to throw a chair at your head and that pushes you to the point of ascending to the next level of drumming within the span of 2 or 3 months?
Well, I didn't say that. Oh no, his growth is possible and fun, but I'm saying like the idea, like, but what I'm getting at is competition judges and the jazz appreciating public can't be wowed in that fashion anymore. They've already seen Vinny Cayuta do 60 minutes of the most superhuman athletic musicianship that that a drummer can have,
Right.
you know, 40 years ago. So I think like, so whatever, that's just, it doesn't really, again, still make believe, so it doesn't really make the film fall apart, but it is a bit harder for anyone who's familiar with that world to think like that it's going to land on them as epically as the film makes it seem.
Right. So you're saying it's a good thing we smash cut to the end credits as soon as it's done. Because
Yeah,
then,
and yeah,
because the reality would have been standing ovation, like people like standing him, like walking him out of the room on their
yeah.
shoulders, cheering. It would
That's
have
what I feel
been
like they're
like, what the
implying.
hell is going on?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think they're implying that it would be the standing ovation, but yeah, right, exactly. It's good that they don't drill that in and make it even harder to believe.
Yes, yes. There's an interesting idea in the final scene. It's funny that we're jumping ahead to that, but I think it's the whole movie's thesis. And I think
Hmm.
one of the things, I'm going to preface this by reminding the audience I still really like this movie. I'm going to beat up on it a little bit, and it's not just because I love Spencer and I want him to love me too. It's because like watching it again and again, I've started to pick up on these things. I think the movie's thesis is a little confused because
Hmm.
what it seems to be saying and what the ending seems to imply, and I think Damien Chazelle, who wrote and directed the film, has said he wants it to be ambiguous, but the movie's not super ambiguous about it. What it seems to imply is in order to achieve greatness, you have to um, emotionally focus just everything, spiritually, physically, everything in your life needs to focus in on this single element, and you need to devote yourself fully to it, and you need somebody to push you past your limits abusively and
Hmm.
to whatever give you whatever push over the edge you need, consequences be damned, whatever that is, to achieve true greatness and to become uh, meaningful or worthwhile
Hmm.
in life.
Hmm.
The whole movie, we see this kid Andrew kind of like he wants to be not just great, he wants to be one of the greats, and he
Hmm.
is every interaction he has when he's trying to connect with other people just doesn't work because they kind of, there's kind of the stereotypical football players around the Thanksgiving dinner table who are like, we love football and you love drumming, all right dude, lame, that kind of thing. Although he does get one of the best lines in the movie, which is when they say, yeah, come play with us, and he says,
Hmm.
what 4 words you will never hear from the
Yeah,
NFL, which is great.
yeah.
But the whole movie is reinforcing this idea of like, if you're an artist, in order to achieve anything of value, you have to abandon every distraction in your life, whether it's a personal connection, whether it's family, and indulge in the vices and the desires of a literal madman, and
Hmm.
give in to his wiles, I guess, and impress him, and
Hmm.
allow that banter, that interaction, that chemistry to bring you both to the next level. So to say, like, and almost everything in the movie kind of reinforces, like, we are getting the feeling of like this guy is sort of being corrupted, and like there's the break when he has the car accident and suddenly like everything falls apart, and Fletcher is finally fired by the university and let go. And so that the movie suggests is like, oh, he's finally got this moment of clarity, and he's got this moment of recovery. He's a recovering addict, and then he kind of just goes right back into it. And if he's a recovering addict, which is another example that Damien Chazelle has used in describing these moments, then the movie's suggesting that at the end of the film, what you need to do is indulge completely in your drug of choice and you will achieve victory. So I don't know what the movie is trying to say, is I think what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I'm confused about this too. Well, I have a slightly different idea of what its thesis might be, but regarding how you just summarized the thesis, I found myself wondering the entire time, and still wondering the entire time through the film, and I'm still wondering whether it's how you described it or if it's somehow still trying to subvert that. I mean, I guess there's not much evidence to think that he's trying to subvert this, this sort of art monster philosophy, the screw your relationship, screw your family, screw your friends, blah, 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 singular focus. That's the only way. Regardless of being an asshole and mistreating people and all these things. Maybe I want too badly in a premeditated fashion for it to argue against that. I guess the only evidence I would say maybe points to the idea that it's ultimately a film coming out against art monsterism is that he does try to call Andrew, the protagonist, does try to call his love interest, Nicole. And of course it doesn't, has moved on by that point, so they don't actually get back together. And then, like you say, he goes back to the full force supply and gets high again.
Right.
But I think it is worth something that that his breakthrough only came after he did make a move toward balance. And so I don't know,
that is a really good point. And also something else, I think that proves that point and gives some meat to the argument of like, no, he's taken charge of his life and he's not going to be pushed around, is during his final performance of Caravan, he is the one calling the shots. And when Fletcher comes over, when the song has ended and he's still going, and Fletcher's like, what are you doing? He's like, no, I'll cue you. And Fletcher's like, okay. It's another very, very fantastical, funny moment that would not be believable in reality.
That is satisfying though.
Yes. But it speaks to your point, which is that he is learned something. He has taken charge, and he's not allowed. It's now like, there's a give and take. It's no longer you push me. It's now, okay, you've pushed me enough. Now we are on equal ground. So I think I think that's a fair argument. And I think, I'm sure it's one that big fans of the film would argue for as well. And there's also an argument to say, like, when he's first embarrassed at the end of the film and he leaves and is walking away and his dad's like, it's going to be okay. He kind of almost, he hugs his dad and then sort of turns back around and is like, no, I'm going to do this. And the dad is watching kind of behind the closed door. And again, you're kind of thinking, like, from a visual sense, you're cutting the dad off from Andrew, from Miles Teller. And you're saying something, you're like, okay, so he's officially like, no, I'm not going back to this. I'm cutting myself off again. And now this relationship here, this rivalry, this frenemy person that I love and hate so much, this is the person who matters most to me and who I'm going to put all my hopes and cares into. So there is an element of like, is this a tragedy? And I think the only thing, and why I think it's confusing, is because the ending is so celebratory and victorious in the way it is framed that it is in the movie theater, you want to stand up and cheer. You're like,
Yeah.
And that's where I think my confusion is like, but wait a second, what is the movie trying to say ultimately
Right.
about this relationship and obsession with art and being an artist?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm totally with you. I think at the end of the day, it probably is playing into art monsterism more than it is critiquing it and subverting it and making the case that this isn't the reality, this isn't what's required, blah blah blah. I mean, not in a totally black and white way. Obviously, devotion is as far as we can all tell, devotion is required, focus is required, sacrifice is required. Hurt feelings is probably required. Yeah, I agree. I think it's ultimately probably playing into the worst version or the worst distortion of all those things than it is helping us understand the true version. For me, it's such a relief that in reality, I'm thinking about, the greats that they keep on referring to all throughout the film: Charlie Parker, Coltrane, whatever, Buddy Rich. I'm thinking about them, and yeah, there's unbelievable suffering in their lives. There's abuse in their lives, both that they inflicted on others or that was inflicted on them. But to me, I'm like, the message of joy that the film might be missing out on, and that comforts me, being like, geez, I hope, I hope this movie isn't, I hope its message isn't.
Hopefully, people are not taking it too much to heart.
Yeah, it's like, okay, good. Reality might be better than this. And to me, the reality outside the film is like, no, those guys were like in ecstasy from discovery all the time. Those guys were like, as far as I know, they were so free with no tyrants like Fletcher in their life, at least not, beyond their tutelage or whatever. But even that, it's like, no, it's like there's accounts of like Duke Ellington, I think, is like, or was it Count Basie? Shoot. the jazz heads will
they're gonna write a 1-star review for my podcast.
On the contrary, it's like, no, it's like some of the best bands and the most foundational stuff. It's like, it was like really built on love and really built on something that resembles nothing like what we saw in the film. But yeah, it's like, it's comforting to me that real life seems to be a lot better than that.
And the funny thing is, the example they keep bringing up about Charlie Parker, he threw a symbol at his head, or he threw a chair, whatever it was. I don't think that's a true story. I was looking it up, and the story is like somebody threw a symbol not at Charlie Parker. But it's also funny that that's Fletcher's justification the whole time for like this one example that it's not like multiple examples. It's like this example justifies everything.
So I figure it's a game of chance. I'll throw as many objects as I can every day on my work. Bound to end
I'll
up
eventually hit somebody who is going to be the next.
Right. But no, that's a great point. And that is one of the most interesting things about the film, because Fletcher does say at one point, basically the reason that Charlie Parker made it through that is because it was not possible to discourage him.
Yes.
That I think is real, but there's a serious irony here, because on one hand, the film is saying that it's like these people that we look up to are impossible to discourage, but then simultaneously it's saying that it needs a Fletcher, or it needs a tyrant or an abuser or an enabler or whatever to do that. And it's like, that is like, hold on, you're missing the point there. And it's also partly contradicting itself. That message is partly contradicting itself, because I think the truth is, those people, those heroes that we hold, who were impossible to discourage, who were compelled to be themselves, is just that. They were compelled to be themselves. Not only was it impossible to discourage them, but they also this is the thing. This is the crux. They also didn't need the symbol at the head.
Yeah,
that's what the film is saying, or what that character is saying, is that he needed Joe Jones to Charlie Parker's band leader, to throw the symbol at his head. But I think what we can take away from other real life examples like Prince, or like, I mean, he's the one that comes to mind the most for me all the time, is that it's like, he didn't need that abuse. Not only could he not be pushed down and not be quelled, but also they don't need this. I mean, it gets into a bit of a gray area though, because I do think there is a role for teachers, and I do think there is a role for encouragement. So I'm not saying, nobody needs help scratching beneath the surface, but let's face it, there's a big gap between being helped to scratch into your potential and what we see in Whiplash.
Agreed. I think, no, I completely agree. And I think it's the need for the teacher that maybe, the disgruntled, I think, is a good word for this gentleman. Yeah. He feels powerful, and in the way he teaches or bullies these people into submission, and that sense of superiority. And in a way, I think he's trying to make himself, there is an angle here where I think you could say this character, his flaw is in, I mean, many, many flaws, obvious flaws, but he's trying to make himself a part of the narrative, an imperative part of the narrative, by saying, like, it's necessary. My role is necessary because that allows for this to ascend to greatness. And what your argument is, and I agree with you, is that, well, maybe anything is possible, but we've seen enough evidence to the contrary to know that is that's not the case. An example I would use, honestly, is your dad, who has been very public about his struggle with substance abuse and his recovery. And people have constantly tried to pigeonhole him as like, oh, well, maybe you should be taking drugs still and making the music you were making that we really loved. And it's bullshit. It's such bullshit, because your dad is living proof that is not, it is not integral to making great art. It is not like the idea of suffering. He's talked about this a lot, and I quote him a lot. It's not integral. Like, suffering, in a certain sense, like, you struggle to make art, and that's part of what makes creation so beautiful. But it's not like, that's not the reason that the creation is beautiful. As your dad has said many times, you make great art despite what you're going through and despite the pain of it. So I completely agree. And I think I'll give Damien Chazelle some credit here and say, like, maybe we are kind of supposed to judge this character and say, like, well, you yourself, like, what are you doing? Like, you're teaching at the most prestigious school. Why aren't you the greatest jazz musician ever, if you know so much? And why are you, like, why is this your take? Why is this the story you're so obsessed with telling over and over again as justification for your actions? Like, I think that's where you start to get really interesting. But the movie never asks those questions. So I think it's hard to gauge, like, where do you stand?
You're right. It asks those questions so little or so unobviously that you saying it right now is eye-opening to me, and I couldn't agree more. It's like absolutely. It's like, what's going on is this guy is profoundly selfish and ill, not just because of his abuse, but it's like, the role he sees, the importance that he sees in his participation in these people's lives is like, dude, come on. You're kidding yourself that it's about the world, that it's about, he says we would deprive the world of the next Charlie Parker if he doesn't do what he does. And it's like, dude, you just like the way it feels to swing your dick around every single day and call these kids the F word and all that. That's it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you love music, and that's why I think that character can fool himself, because he does love music. And I think the closest thing we get to thinking about the questions you just raised are when we do see him play piano in that jazz club, and that's a very important scene, for obviously, because it sets us up for the painful sabotage at the end, but also because it's like we wouldn't really know if he's capable of feeling joy. We wouldn't really know if he has anything at all to do with the beauty of music, period, And so it does show us that, which is
For
good.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, you're right. And again, you kind of mentioned in the first part of the episode, you thought there might be a humanizing element, like, oh, maybe it's all for a good reason. Do you that? I mean, that you could argue that scene in a way, but I think what's funny about that, and in retrospect, I'm sure thinking about it now, like the character is very much like motivated by his selfishness and anger.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
there's
look,
not a lot of the sweetness is used as a manipulating thing,
yeah,
a tool of manipulation.
I mean, this is incredibly common. I've obviously never seen it to that extent in teachers in that I've encountered in my life, but people becoming, distorted by their position and by their authority. That's like one of the most common themes of history, and in any domain, So
Right.
it's like, so totally makes sense that he would be like, or I was, just gonna say that I've seen it on a much more limited scale. Just like you can tell when someone enjoys a little bit too much the sensation of being doted upon, waited upon, every word, feared, all those things. And it sucks.
Yeah.
That sucks, I think it's hard to resist. Anyone can get caught up in that, even like really well-meaning people, but it's like, so it seems really important to resist if you don't want to become a selfish, icky person.
That's the scientific term, I think.
Yeah.
So J.K. Simmons, he did win an Oscar for this performance. And, it's an amazing performance. The guy himself, I've loved him in everything I've seen him in, which is the Spider-Man films, and he's great as a grumpy dad in Juno and other films as well.
Yeah.
I think he's played that role a couple times. But like the sheer, like the monstrous nature of this character made him so iconic, and I feel like it is a deserving performance as far as the act. I don't even know how many. He won so many awards for it, despite the character flaws and the cloudy judgment maybe of the storytelling. Do you feel like this is one of the great performances? Is this something, do you think you can understand why maybe people have latched onto it and said this is one of cinema's great turns, one of the great villains in cinema?
I think that he killed it. I don't think he possibly could have done it better. I think it's a fantastic performance. I don't think that there's enough there to give it that status, personally. And that's actually something I really like about the film. It's almost like a bottle film, a bottle episode, whatever.
Yes,
it's like very limited.
It's like a pressure cooker. Like it's all very focused in on this
pressure cooker, maybe 2 main locations, whatever. And I love that. I love the simplicity of that. It's kind of, I love when a film is able to like have a huge impact while being so focused in that way. So definitely that's something I like, but I think ultimately that means, we're getting 90 minutes of J.K. Simmons, or let's say we're getting 88 minutes of him doing the same thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel, I feel like if I were a peer of him and I were, going up for similar roles and vying for similar recognition, I would be like, that's not fair. He did a great job. He did a really, really great job. The spell was never broken by him. And I'll also say, I think that his performance is accurate, again, over the top, but like, he learned the subtle flavor of like band director.
Not quite my tempo. Not quite my tempo.
Yeah. Even like I'm saying, even the nicer ones, or the less problematic and less, let's say, like, I don't know, twisted, jazz teachers out there, they kind of have that douchey conduction style. Some of them do. And so, I think he was pretty true to life in that way too. So great job. But ultimately I would say it can't make the canon, along with some of the some of the more serious, some of the more complex stuff out there. I just watched Good Will Hunting for the first time.
Really?
Not to get us off track, but like
no, go for it.
like a Robin Williams is somebody that I would think qualify as one of the all-time greats. That's not actually a villain, so I'm
but
getting
as
off
far
the
as
rails.
accolade, like a performance that goes down in cinema history that
Yeah.
got a lot of attention, awards attention,
Yeah.
and maybe was deserving.
Yeah, but the writing is great, and again, and like I said, his performance is great. It's just like as a premise, as a concept from the foundational at the foundation, doesn't seem like it can really go head to head with those other ones. But what do I know?
No, I mean, enough there. And Whiplash is a film that is, I think, it's one of its greatest strengths is its energy and its zest, and it really. It hooks you and it pulls you in, and you are in that world, and you're not really thinking about this stuff, or at least I wasn't the first couple times I saw it until like afterwards. You're like, oh, wait a sec. How far, if he got in a really bad car accident, like, would he really like, and if he's bleeding and running onto the stage and clearly out of his mind and pain, would Fletcher, who is so obsessed with perfection, say, let's push this through?
Right.
There are things like that are like, okay, we're now teetering on the edge of believability, and that's fine. But I think because the film is so gritty and grounded, that when things like that happen, it does call attention to it a little bit more, and you do start to pay attention to these things a little bit more.
Yeah, and it's a feat that they were able to achieve something like mainstream appeal with a freaking jazz movie. I mean, that's awesome. That's truly awesome, even though the version of jazz that they present is so divorced from what I appreciate.
What do you appreciate personally?
They allude to this in the film, and it's ironic because in my view, the character Fletcher is participating in the demise or in the calcification of jazz by being a conservatory teacher and by leading his band the way he does. But but what I'm talking about is the film alludes to when he says, and they wonder why jazz is dying, because they won't let teachers like me push young people to greatness. That's when he refers to it, but the broader thing in life outside of the film is, for like, I don't know how many generations now, 2 or 3 generations now, people kind of feeling like when jazz entered the academy, it stopped growing and stopped being a vital, fiery part of life and part of art. And to some extent, that's not true, obviously, because things never die. There are still people writing new operas. There are still people, art forms might just become less prominent or whatever, but that doesn't mean there aren't people still keep holding the flame somewhere. But there is truth, I think, to the idea that, and I'll just speak from my own experience again. It's like I was in jazz band in elementary school and high school, and my entire time in 6+ years, it got different in college, but in 6 or 7 years of studying jazz in a school environment, or rather, sorry, playing jazz, no one ever made us listen to jazz. And you would count on less than one hand the kids in that environment who did that on their own accord. And on one hand, when I started thinking about that in high school, I was like, on one hand, that's kind of cool because maybe this is all like dropping aliens on another planet, and we're making jazz that is actually more bizarre because of our lack of awareness. But that's too optimistic. Really, ultimately, is what it was like. Is like we're learning rules in here. We're learning theories. We're learning rules of thumb. We're working for a grade. Sometimes we're pleasing. We're like stumbling around based on the clues from this director who has their own relationship with jazz, which itself might be nice. But But ultimately, it's like what we should be being taught to understand was jazz arising out of wild expression
Yes.
and necessity. And obviously, there's a humongous topic that literally fills thousands of books about the role of race and all of that. But even if we're not discussing that, it's just like the to me the definition of jazz is innovation, is like rock on tour, like personality and like ecstasy, kind of. I mean, this is sort of like how we might feel about any kind of music, but it is also like especially important with jazz because of where it comes out of, and the role that it plays for in people's lives and stuff. So the idea is like it's calcified when we're only reading charts, only reading classic charts in
Mm-hmm.
school environments, and there's this like what J.K. Simmons' character is instituting in that alongside that, which is like militarism. It's like
Yeah.
command hierarchy, and that was part of the golden age or whatever, most prominent age of jazz too, out in the real world, but in a totally different way. But yeah, attaching to it like this superstructure that has nothing at all to do with everybody discovering crazy surprising things together.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's what they mean about it dying, and it's ironic that that character refers to that, and it's like, nobody, you're
Yes.
doing that
You're
actually.
part of the problem. Yeah.
You're part of the problem.
One of the other things is it was so improvisational. Like that
Yeah.
was kind of the whole point of it was the performance element and feeding, like being fed just you're engaging with an audience directly in this crowded, sweaty, smoky room, and
Mhm.
you are taking them wherever you feel you need to
Mhm.
go. And
Yeah.
that's the complete antithesis of the classic jazz
Yes.
idea, like what you're saying, of like sitting down, looking at the chart, let's follow this note by note. If a single note is off, it is
Yeah.
wrong and it is
Yeah.
deserving of total punishment and
Yeah.
and embarrassment and
Yeah.
shame.
Mhm.
But jazz was at the time, like it came out of that wild need for expressiveness, and that like whatever you were feeling was expressed through your instrument
Mhm.
during the performance, whatever it was at that time. And
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, is that he is kind of and that you see that a lot, I think, with great art, is the
Mhm.
teacher who is so insistent that it has to be a certain way that they smother um,
Yeah.
what it can possibly be, and the things that crop up in spite of that smothering, they tend to be the most interesting things as a
Yeah.
result.
Yeah.
So
And that is ultimately what Andrew does, I guess.
yeah,
He does break through the concrete slab that Fletcher poured on top of all of that talent.
yes,
he
yeah.
he is a flower that pokes through.
That's true. No, that's a good point. So how do you feel
Mhm.
about Andrew in general as a character, Miles Teller? I think I'll put my 2 cents in, and then I want to hear what you think.
Mhm.
Miles Teller has the near thankless job of playing opposite this
Mhm.
like incredible, flashy, insane. It's kind of like, it reminds me of Christian Bale
Mhm.
like playing against Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight, where
Mhm.
you're playing the straight man, and
Mhm.
there's the danger of getting outshone by just this eccentric, like
Yeah.
insane force of nature. And I think Miles Teller does a really fantastic job of humanizing Andrew, despite like the obsessive nature of this character, and maybe a little
Mhm.
thin.
Mhm.
The characterization is a little thin. Like, I just want to be the
Mhm.
greatest, and that's it.
Mhm.
We don't know much about him. He likes hanging out with his dad, going to see the movies.
Yeah.
He likes hanging out with girls who work at movie theaters.
Yeah.
So he's a movie fan, but
Mhm.
obsessed with jazz to the point of nearly ruining his whole life.
Mhm.
But I think what Miles Teller does really, really well is just imbuing that with humanity, where you can empathize with him and you like him
Mhm.
and you're willing to go on the ride with him, which I think in lesser hands that could have really hurt the movie. But how do you
Yeah.
feel?
I agree with you. I think that he did it well. They're ultimately not filling out the character that much. So given the constraints, I think that he did a really good job. I think if he displays any change or growth, really, it's like, I think he did a good job portraying a nervous, low confidence 19-year-old at the very start of the film. That was very convincing. And then and then he see that changes, and I think he did a good job portraying that. But that's also just sort of the bare minimum. That's like, that's maybe that's just rewarding him for doing his job.
Is there anything you felt like a scene you felt you needed with him that would have maybe?
Yeah, I think we almost got it when he goes out to see, and he ends up seeing Fletcher in a jazz bar, but I think it probably would have screwed up the plot. But I think that we would have understood more about Andrew if we did see him engaging with music outside of the dorm room. Yeah, I think we would have learned about him, but again, I think that would have screwed up the plot, because I think, really, because I think the reality is, like, the only way you start to feel like Fletcher is the beginning and the ending of your chance at greatness and your life as an artist is if you're not going out there on your own,
Yeah.
And so
that might also be the point. Like, it might be like we only see him in this obsessive state of mind where does he even enjoy this anymore? Like, it's like, where's the joy in it? Like, what are you ultimately trying to achieve? You want to be great. And, again, the argument is like, oh, the great artists need to suffer, blah, blah, blah. But like, at the end of the day, it's like, if you're not creating anything and you're just like following the whims of this madman, what are you getting out of it?
Yeah.
And I don't know if we ever get, the only time he really like questions anything is when he is replaced by other drummers, and then he gets really upset. So it's just that competitive like nature. And then the only time, like I've seen the movie a couple times, but it's sort of surprised me when during that jazz scene, he says Charlie Parker, like the guy threw a cymbal, I'm just trying to find the next Charlie Parker. And he says, well, can you go too far? That's the only time he almost has like his own agency and thought of his own making that isn't driven by the environment. And then immediately Fletcher is like, no, because next Charlie Parker wouldn't be dissuaded by that. And Andrew's like, no, you're right. And the movie may be saying like, yes, that's how destructive this relationship is. But again, I think because the film also rejoices, when we conclude the film, it's rejoicing in that relationship. It's hard to know, like, are we supposed to be condemning this or celebrating it? And the movie doesn't quite, movies don't always need to tell you, but I think when this movie is, like you said, characters are relatively like straightforward and simplistic in a way that we're not seeing a whole lot of complexity. Then when you get to that end, all you can say is like, well, I guess I'm supposed to take this at face value. I don't know if I'm supposed to look any deeper into this.
It just occurred to me that Andrew he's kind of occupying a John Wayne role,
Yeah.
So I think that it's probably very deliberate that he's a young man of very few words, and he's like quite stoic. And so I think that that's the cowboy, that's the cowboy in Whiplash is is that.
And I think maybe, and a lot of people really love this movie. And I think there is another conversation, and this is like a whole other topic. I don't want to go off on a completely different tangent, but there is an idea here of like the film itself. The film was so widely praised. It is still held in such high regard. I didn't check to see, but if I'm looking at the lists like on Letterboxd or IMDb, this film ranks extraordinarily high in the annals of cinema. People love this movie. And I think I'm like, it's a great movie. But then there's a part of me that wonders, like, and it's good talking to you about it, because I'm like, okay, there is a part of me that is wondering, am I responding? Is it my contrarian need to, it's good, but it's not that good. Like, am I more annoyed by the people who are hailing it so highly, or do I have a legitimate cause to criticize certain things.
I think you have legitimate cause. It's like, I'm surprised it's not a short film.
It was a short film.
Oh, it was.
Well, so what happened was Damien Chazelle wrote the feature, couldn't get funding for it, so he shot the first drumming scene that Miles's character. He's not played by Miles in the film, but J.K. Simmons did play Fletcher in the short.
Wow.
The first time Andrew plays for Fletcher, like the notorious "It's not my tempo" and breaks him down and makes him cry. That scene. That was shot.
Are you a single? Don't tell me you're a single tear guy. I take it back. That line made him deserve the Oscar.
Yes, 100%. But he did. It was primarily because it was to get funding for the feature, to prove this concept can work. And so technically it is a short. Technically that short is just a scene from the film. But it's hard. Like, I mean, a feature version of this is hard to maintain. And I think you do have a point when you start to say, like, can this film manage the weight of a feature length with this kind of very focused, very, not paper thin, but relatively thin characterizations where it's so focused that it's almost at the expense of something a little bit more complex and deeper.
Agreed. Yeah. No, I think your feelings are totally reasonable. And asking myself, like, is like, what could they have done to add some of that depth that we're yearning for in? And I've never written a script, but I expect it would be, and so I expect it would be really, really difficult I think it's always difficult to walk the line between exposition and telling people, showing versus telling, and some of the stuff that we might want them to talk about would make them go way off the deep end into, heavy-handed kind of telling rather than showing. But one of the things I think that they probably could have got, like, a really useful scene is the scene with the lawyer between Andrew, his dad, and the lawyer, who is magically making his hypothetical assault charge go away because this teacher is under investigation for using bad words and occasionally throwing objects. But just side note, he would still be having charges pressed for attacking this guy unless Fletcher probably did choose not to charge him. But at the very least, he'd have a hefty bill from the rental car company and the insurance agency.
It's another moment in the film where I started to think, like, wait a second, did Andrew get in trouble for tackling? Wait, what's happening here? Like, who's in trouble and why are they in trouble?
He fully totaled the rental car with
zero. Like, what happened to the rental car?
With zero repercussion.
Right.
At least his dad might have said something about that. But that's such a useful scene because in that context, with sort of like, for a fresh perspective, the perspective of this lawyer, he's able to, those moments, if there were another moment like that, it's where he's able to actually talk about the life questions that we're discussing here. And one of the things, if they were going to add any of that in to sort of appease Shawn and Spencer, I think that maybe Damien could have talked about what is greatness and why is it desired and does it even exist?
Yeah.
Because it's like, yes, in jazz there are the big five. What I don't actually know if it's 5 or 6 or people. We don't. That term is not used, but whatever. Like tennis or like anything, there's a big 3, there's a big 5, a big 10.
Right.
There's Charlie Parker and all of his cohort from the 1960s and 70s and 50s. And they might have had a conversation. The film might have had Fletcher or Andrew or others. I mean, we don't even hear from another musician in the film,
Yeah.
There could
all it takes is one person to say, like, were the Beatles miserable when they made Sgt. Pepper's?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Like, all right.
Yeah. There could have been a Yoda drummer in the film that he goes to see, chain smoking cigarettes in an apartment on the Upper East Side or whatever. who might have said something like, oh yeah, like those, Miles Davis, these people, they're all on our Mount Rushmore, but this isn't a sport. This
Yeah.
isn't,
Yeah.
this isn't, uh, this isn't, you know, geopolitics. Or whatever. This isn't quantifiable.
Mm.
So yes, we remember these guys. They're special. Like, don't get me wrong, they're special, and they're part of history in a unique way. But there isn't a leaderboard anywhere. There isn't someone keeping score. And one day you might have a gig with Terrence Fletcher where you actually will sound as good as your heroes. That's actually achievable. You you can have a gig where you sound like,
and nobody will know about it. And the only
yeah,
thing you can take away from that is
yeah,
what you brought to it. That's all.
yeah,
You're going to have to live with that memory of like, no one will know about this, but at the very least I achieved this thing. And it's the
yeah.
matter of like, yeah, this, to these people, these are the greats.
hmm
But then you talk to this person and they're like, I've never even heard of who's Miles Davis. Like, is he
Yeah,
like what? I don't know. Like,
yeah, exactly.
it's like, so it is a never ending battle, and it's a fruitless battle because
Yeah.
you will never, ever win.
Yes, totally. And this is spoken like a true, like rock musician. I'm speaking like one right now because like revealing some of like the, things that some rock musicians tell ourselves about what can be seen as a dwindling industry or whatever. I mean, it is in some regards and it isn't in others. But it's like one of the things you tell yourselves, at the very least, similarly to jazz, we also have a, a golden age. We have the Beatles, we have Paul McCartney, we have classic rock, we have all these things we look up to, or you could even place it elsewhere if you idolize the 90s or something like that, the height of the CD era or whatever. And so everyone kind of has to figure out a way not to lose motivation, thinking about it not being what it once was, or the ceiling being lower. I in college I had a roommate who was studying opera in the conservatory at our school, and one night, really late at night, he was just like feeling really, really down, and he was like, I'm depressed because opera's dead. Now no one cares about opera." And I was like, well, I mean, I won't argue that, it's certainly not filling the stands with
It's not my cup
youth.
of tea.
It's not my cup of tea, and it's not like, the center of glamorous urban life like it was 300 years ago. But we had a conversation about like the relativity of history that you were just talking about. It's like, yeah, in like another 500 years, it's like it's likely that Taylor Swift will be remembered and documented, but not like, it's not going to feel like this. She might feel like Mozart or whatever,
Yeah.
quote unquote irrelevant or whatever to the majority of like lay people. And so basically, we should stop crying our tears, stop worrying about like
Yeah.
whether peaks have passed or whatever, and instead I think the question is, what is enough to have a life that's awesome to us?
Yes.
Is there enough participation on a scale, on like a scale from strangers, where we can have rock shows and release music? Yes, absolutely. And that exists for opera too, I think. I don't know. I'm out of my depth there. But yeah, the question for like Andrew's character and for jazzers in the 21st century, it's like, is there enough? And it's like, oh my God, yes. It's vibrant. There's clubs in every major city. You can go there, play jazz. You can still jam with strangers, start new bands, and truly change the way jazz is received. And you can it's even possible to make a living doing it. It's not
Yeah.
easy, obviously. It's never been easy, and it's even harder now.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that was a lot to throw at
No,
you. Sorry, but
all of this is beautiful.
yeah, it's just like I think, if that going if that scene that the Shawn and Spencer depth adding scene
Yeah,
exists,
just put this hour-long conversation into the middle of Whiplash, and
yeah,
it's great. It's a masterpiece.
director's cut, totally revised. Yeah, they might have had that conversation about like, or a much pared down, simplified conversation about like, what kind of life is everyone here in the scene looking for?
Right.
How does music relate to that life? And what part of the suffering are we gonna keep?
You know what? I couldn't say it better myself. I agree 100%. Give Spencer Tweedy the Whiplash sequel. We
Okay,
need you to write it.
I'll direct the conservatory. No, I'm going for straight for the main stuff. I'm talking Dean of Jazz Studies here. If I start throwing things, please stop me though. I'm counting on you.
You know
to
what?
keep
It
me
might
true.
be a good thing. You might be
Yeah.
creating the next Charlie Parker.
Who knows?
Who knows? So so nuance is what the film lacks. Energy is what it has in spades.
Yeah.
And I think you and I are looking for a tiny bit more depth, but
Yeah.
it's not a bad thing that you have this insane pressure cooker of a movie that has tons of energy. It's like an adrenaline shot, but I think when you start to come down from the adrenaline shot, you start to say, wait a second, like why did I crash that car? Why did I leave the scene of an accident? Why did I rush on stage bleed with a head wound bleeding and try to play in this jazz band?
Yeah. That was sweet that you brought up my dad earlier, and I just remembered, if we're talking about examples like that, it's like, what is another thing that sometimes creates Charlie Parkers? Kicking him out of the band. It's like,
right.
if Fletcher was really thinking in another way, it's like, yeah, you are late. You showed up. You passed out because you were just in a car crash. No, you're done. Like he said. He said you're done, and it's like, wait, hold on. I'm confusing myself. That is what happened because he only had a breakthrough after he did kick him out. Oh shit.
Uh-oh. Wait.
But
now we have to. It's a masterpiece deserving of every Oscar. That's what we've come full circle.
Yeah, I was just saying, I mean, something that I think about a lot, and from learning from my dad's experience, is the idea of institutions, obviously having a lot of support for him, having a lot of belief in him, but also not, and also withholding or withdrawing that support, famously with Yin Quixote but even before that, just like being told like, you're not the real deal.
Yeah, after Uncle Tupelo.
Yeah, exactly, and just being like, well, you
right, yeah. But that's what's amazing about is he's continually done that throughout his whole career.
Miles Teller's character had to learn how to bet on himself.
Yes.
And sure, Fletcher helped him toward that, but at the end of the day, he is either someone who's gonna bet on himself or not. And I used to feel crazy. I promise I won't go totally off the rails again, but it used to drive me crazy in the conservatory at my college, seeing students so single-mindedly focused on pleasing professors, when I was like, if you felt a broader sense of possibility, you would be like you're great. Like you're so talented. And it's like, there's actually an artificial limit placed on what you can do with your art right now because of this kind of like small, the blinders that this sort of like circumstance seem to be placing on you. But it's like ultimately betting on yourself. And it doesn't mean like then all of a sudden being like this hot shot who's ungovernable and unteachable. It just means like just being like just a bit broader perspective and being like, no, I actually like this is how I hear it, and actually I
Yeah.
want to play it like this, and blah blah blah. And that. I guess that's where he ended up. Like you said, all right, fine, it's a masterpiece.
No, but I agree with you. I think as fun
Yeah.
as the film is, I think as great as it can be, it lacks depth and nuance and perspective is what it
Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
said, like this whole conversation is both of us waxing poetic about, we
Mhm.
needed more like the character, if they could only
Yeah.
and it's not, yes, I get the film, not every
Mhm.
film needs to have that, and this film
Yeah.
works despite what we want from it. It
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
works. It
Yeah.
still works as what it is, but I think because of the lack of perspective and nuance, where we're not getting a whole lot of like, well, wait a second, like not every artist needs a chair thrown at their head to be great. It's
Mhm.
the simplicity of it does work against it. I think it's its
Yes.
greatest strength and its greatest weakness. And
Absolutely.
I'm with you, but I really enjoy it. I hope you enjoyed it too overall.
Totally. Absolutely. And I was impressed. Yeah.
We think it probably needs to be taken down. Not a major peg, just a little tiny peg.
Just not, tippy top. Not Charlie
Not the
Parker.
tippy top.
Not Coltrane level. It's just plain great.
It's just plain great, and that's okay. You know what? Good job, Damien and Chazelle.
Yeah.
The two
Yeah.
most harmful words apparently
Yes.
in the English language. Good job, but he did a really good job.
That's an iconic line. That's great writing. And there might have been like 15% more to give us of that.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. So let's say our final ratings. How many chairs would you throw and or dodge on behalf of Whiplash? Out of 5. 5 is the highest, 1 is the lowest.
I think it's a solid 4.25.
Okay. See, that's really good. Yeah, I will give it a solid 4. I'm like borderline 4.5, but I think 4 is where I'm sitting now at this point in time, at this very important juncture. But this has been
right.
It feels right. This has been wonderful. So great to have you back, Spencer. You've got all kinds of cool stuff going on. Do you want to tell the good people at home what's happening in your life? Tell them about your book. Like, are you still selling copies of Observations?
Yeah. I put out, self-released a book of basically blog posts from my blog of just like found items on the street or like scenes that I see out in the world and kind of took note of. So that is available on my website, spencertweedy.com. I'm also I have like the final copies of my book about self-recording musicians called Mirror Sound that I'm going to try to give it the old big push, as they call it, and sell before the year is over. So if you're interested in recording or like how people make music and make records, this is a book I made with Lawrence Azerrad and Daniel Topete, and we had a great time making it, and I'm selling copies on my website. So that's all at spencertweedy.com.
And then someday, we don't know when, but it's coming, we will get the SUKIERAE sequel that the world needs.
Oh yeah, we are in the laboratory.
Which song off SUKIERAE does Andrew need to listen to, you think? Which song would help him through his...
Well, only because you asked. I wouldn't be so... hopefully I wouldn't be so conceited to prescribe anything to him unsolicited.
Listen, Andrew, listen. If you would just listen to this song I made.
Maybe Nobody Dies Anymore?
Yeah.
Just because I feel like that song is really all about the space in the room, my dad's acoustic guitar and the drums that I put that actually I'm struggling to talk about my own playing, but I think that
he can learn a lot from your drumming is what you're saying.
Whiplash is definitely falling prey to or perpetuating the idea that faster, louder, and busier is the only metric of success. And that's very funny and totally makes sense for the purpose of a mainstream film. And also being able to play well very fast and being able to play complex and athletic things is is worth something too, but it is definitely only part of the picture.
Yes, agreed. So that's great. And find me on Twitter. I might say hi to you there at Shawn Dorman. I'm on Letterboxd, Shawn Dorman 05. You can yell at me for not giving Whiplash a perfect score. And this has been wonderful. Spencer, thank you again.
Thanks, Shawn.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. And we will see you at the movies.